I'm Lily Moayeri, one of Festival Advisors contributors, and I'm here with Rida Naser of SiriusXM. So I'm so excited to welcome Rida. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to see you, and it's just amazing to be here. I'm such a big fan of everything that Festival Advisor does. You're an amazing writer, and I've worked with Michael Julian in the past before, so I'm just very, very honored and excited to be here.
That's a good meeting of everyone. Besides being on air 6 days a week, Rita is also a program director for a number of the channels at SiriusXM. Rita, why don't you tell us when and where people can hear you on air, also which channels you're programming, and most importantly, what exactly is a program director?
Okay, cool. So I'm on the air. Yeah, so it's interesting. I kind of do two jobs, which is really exciting. I get to do kind of like the behind the scenes stuff and to be in front of the scenes. So I get like a little taste of everything. So as far as being on the air, I'm on the air Monday to Friday on BPM from 10 a.m. Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern. And then on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern, I'm on the air on Hits One, which is the top 40 channel. And then I'm a program director for also BPM, which is today's dance hits, Pop2K, which is the top hits from the early 2000s, which is, in my opinion, the best music. And I also just started programming Steve Aoki's Remix Radio, which is just all pop and dance remixes, which has been a lot of fun to work on, and to be able to bring that together and launch it. So definitely have my hands full in a lot of aspects.
So by program director is essentially deciding what goes on the air.
Yeah, so as a program director, you're kind of like the big picture kind of person where you plan out what's going to happen on your channels. You have to make sure you provide this amazing content that listeners are looking for. Listeners subscribe to SiriusXM for a specific reason, not just having a playlist, but you want to have the amazing content. So as a program director, you really decide on not only the music that you're playing, the content that's being brought to you, whether it's with artists, whether it's with DJs, producers, et cetera, et cetera. And then also, all the imaging that really plays in between. Like if you're listening to BPM, you want to feel like you're at a festival, and we bring that entire just vision to you through the radio. So we work really, really hard to bring that together. And on Pop2K, it's kind of the same thing, but what we work really hard on is bringing back the nostalgia. So if you have memories from the early 2000s, if you listen to that channel, you'll be able to kind of go back to those those early days where it was just like your childhood or some of your best memories. So we really work together to not make it just like a typical radio station. Like we want to make it like an experience in every single channel that we work on.
Your excitement totally comes through. I know how much you love your jobs, and I know I definitely feel that. So I don't know if people who are not in radio realize this, but being a program director is a very highly coveted position. And I know you worked incredibly hard to get to where you are, and you had some amazing mentors along the way. Can you tell us about some of the people who taught you and encouraged you?
Yeah, so I have a few actually. So when I first started my journey in FM radio, I wasn't really I didn't know anything about radio at all, to be honest with you. And a guy named Brian Karstensen saw the passion in me and was like, listen, she's willing to learn. Let me take her under my wing. I'll teach her everything. And I still thank him till today. Like I'll text him every other week and I'll be like, I appreciate you, just randomly, because he's really the person who made me fall in love with everything that I do now. So he taught me just like something as little as like editing or answering the phone for when it's about to go on the air. So he really taught me everything I know. So when I was an intern, I was 19 years old, and he was like, yeah, let me work with her. So he's definitely up there as one of my mentors. And then another mentor that's really important to me is, his name is Tommy West. He was my mentor when I was an intern at SiriusXM. This is before I started my entire journey in this company. And he was just like my number one fan. He always believed in me. He always said that he saw a little bit of him in me when he was younger. So he was just really, really passionate in helping me get brought up. So as an intern, he always had my back. He always had me work on some amazing projects and would always teach me things, and tell me if I'm doing something wrong or tell me if something could be better. And he just worked with me really, really well. And, I never took anything he said in a way of like, in any negativity. It was always like constructive criticism, and it always like helped me grow in so many ways. So, he was my mentor at the time. And when I had finished my internship, he was really pushing for me to get hired, because he was like, listen, we need more younger kids, or, like just younger people who have this passion for radio, because radio is just not the same as what it used to be back in the day when it was like everyone's number one thing. So he's like, we want to make sure that we get these people into this world that are super, super passionate about it. So, he really pushed for me to get hired. And once I got hired at SiriusXM, I had to go through all the interview processes just like everyone else does. And he was like, all right, now that you're in here, let's work with you. Let's get you on the air. Let's do other things. So he would like push me into studio. He's like, go record something, go do something. And I'm like, I don't know. And he was always just my person to like push me even when I was unsure of myself. So he really is just an amazing human being. And he's always been my number one fan since, I started at this company. So I really do have him to thank for a lot of things. And then as I was working there, my manager, so Tommy was just at the time, he just became my friend because I wasn't really working with him directly. So we kind of just like we were coworkers, which was really awesome to think about. But he would help me on the side when I had some free time and stuff to just work on things like being on the air. But at the time, my manager was Vanessa Mojica, and I walked into this company. She interviewed me. She was just like, I still look at her like, I'm like, how do you do all the things you do? She is like spinning 55 plates a minute. Like she's doing a million things at once, always does it with such grace, always does it in such an incredible manner. And like, she's just one of those people, like, how reliable she is. You'll email her or you'll text her. She'll never come back to you and be like, I'm really overwhelmed, I can't help you right now. She'll be like, give me 5 minutes, I'll be right there. So like just seeing her, and she's super young too. She's super passionate. She has a family. Like she just in so many aspects is just so inspiring that like she just balances everything in such an amazing way that she just became one of my biggest inspirations. And still up until this day, she's not my manager anymore, but she became someone who I was confiding in many, many ways. Like even now, if I'm stressed at work, I'll message her and I'll be like, can we Zoom for a little bit? And she's like, yeah, absolutely, let's set up a time. And I'll just like vent to her and ask her for advice. So she still works at SiriusXM, but later on my manager ended up becoming Geronimo, who's the vice president of Dance Electronic. And he's kind of the one who like really, really believed in me. Once I started working in the industry, I was an on-air host. He worked with me there. And then they sent me to a festival and I started doing a lot of the behind the scenes work because I was familiar with it. So he was like, like, let's get her on to be the APD of BPN, which is the associate program director. So I would work directly under him. And, from there, he kind of taught me everything I knew about dance music. And he's so well respected in this industry. And just being with him or being next to him in so many, whether it's like festivals or industry events or even just like label dinners, I would just kind of observe and see what he would do. And it was just really, really inspiring. And then I did want to give a shout out to one other person. His name is Dre Nieto. He was a program director. He is a program director. He programs Diplo's Revolution and SiriusXM Chill. And at the time, he was helping program BPM as well. So I was working under both Dre and Geronimo, and just like seeing the two of them together and seeing how well they worked and just seeing the way like artists' faces would light up when they would see them. I'm like, I want to do that one day, So I would always like, they became my go-tos to go to whenever like I had a question about anything in the dance world. Like I would literally go to Dre and be like, I A-Track, like who's A-Track? He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, you don't know who A-Track is? I'm like, I help me. And like, he would just like sit there and give me like the background of everything. So I would say those are like my main mentors throughout my entire journey. I know it was kind of long, but I'm sorry.
It's not, because I know just from speaking to you that there are so many key people that really encouraged you and saw something in you. And when you were telling me that Tommy, like what you said earlier about Tommy, having you practice, getting in a studio and just recording yourself and working on your on-air persona and how you put things across. You're like, well, we did that for a year. And I'm like, wait, what? You went and did like practice sessions, and this person constantly worked with you and gave you feedback for a year.
A year, yeah.
That's invaluable. That really says something, both about, your tenacity and his support. That combination is really amazing.
And it's amazing because when you have support like that from people, you want to be that support for people moving forward as well. Like, I want someone to look back and be like, Rita helped me through all of these things. And it was because all of these people that I mentioned, and there's also so many people that I didn't mention along the way, that, they know how much of an impact they made in my career and in my life, that I want to be that for someone one day.
Yeah. One of the things we spoke about in our interview was your Pakistani background, and I come from also a Middle Eastern background, so we could relate on that level. And also how you didn't see anyone like you in the positions that you were going for.
Yeah.
How did this affect you both personally and professionally? Because I know there was a big change coming from Long Island, where you grew up, to New York City, and not having a variety of different ethnicities around, but still not seeing somebody exactly like you.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely was. A lot of people would think it's tough to come into that situation, but for me, it kind of set fuel to the fire, where I was like, you know what, like, allow me to be different. Let me come in and let me show them that, like, a young Pakistani girl can do it too. So I think it really helped having that mindset by having such amazing mentors in the past and having such amazing people that I was working under that would be like, you know what, like, do it. I like that she's different. I like that she's bringing her own, her own thing into it. So I think it definitely was a big, like, change for me coming from Long Island, where, like, I wasn't really, not that I wasn't accepted, because I would never say that I wasn't accepted, but I definitely felt different coming from Long Island, where it was a predominantly white town, and, like, I was a little different, and it definitely was like it was just like a wake up call for me to come to the city and just seeing this, like, melting pot of people walking around left and right, and then going into this industry where, yeah, it is, predominantly male oriented, or white male, but just having that support and having those allies, I think, helped me a lot in many, many ways that I didn't see on Long Island. I only saw it in the city. So I'm not speaking for everyone's situation, because for other people it may be different, but for my situation particularly, I was lucky enough to have that support in so many ways, where it allowed me to kind of, like, express and, like, show who I am and not be embarrassed of it, where in the past I have felt embarrassed of my background.
Yeah, because I always feel like I was kind of trying to neutralize myself as much as possible, so nobody ascribed anything that I liked or I did to my cultural background, because I really didn't feel like it had anything to do with my taste, so to speak, especially not when it comes to music, or just maybe with my personality, but not necessarily with anything professional. So I really feel like I was doing that for a long time, initially consciously and then subconsciously.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we've come, out the other end of that and kind of embracing whatever it is that makes up who we are. And you also put together this fantastic BPM Empowered Festival. How did that come about? What are your plans with it? Are we going to see more of them moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, this was an amazing thing that I was able to put together, and it, like, after having done it and going through all the, stress and, like, the anxiety of it, and it was just like, I still wake up every morning and I'm like, I'm just so happy that I got the opportunity to do something like that. So basically the idea came about because there was a website that put out, like, a bunch of, like, a list, right? It was a list of DJs and producers, and it was, like, the top DJs and producers of 2020. And, like, there was, like, probably 4 women on there. And this list had, like, 1,000 producers on there. And I was like, and people were like, serious, like, there are no women on here. And it's like, it's not even like the fact that there are no women DJs. There's a lot of them. It's just they're not highlighted enough. And, like, I was seeing this conversation ignite on Twitter, and people are like, I don't understand why people aren't using the platforms they have to showcase women. And I was like, that kind of like a light went off. And I was like, okay, I have a platform. Let's showcase women. Like, let's do it. Right. So it was like a random night. I texted Geronimo and I was like, I have this idea. Let me know what you think. I'm like, this has never happened before. No one has ever just put on like a women empowerment festival before. I was like, obviously it would be virtual. I was like, I just think this could be really, really cool. There are so many amazing, talented women out there. And I just feel like knowing that they have this kind of a platform, like, why don't we do something like this? He was all in for the idea. He's like, I love this. He's like, I'm here to help and support in whatever you need. But he's like, I want you to take the reins. You know, he's the vice president of dance and electronics. So everything really has to go through him. But he was like, I want you to make the intros. Like, if there's someone you want to be connected to, like, I'm letting you handle this, because just imagine the story of like, not only, okay, it's a festival with women only, but it was put on by women. So it's just like, it was just super exciting. And like, that just like got me going. And once I started asking artists about it, they were like, this is an amazing idea. Like, I'm so in. So, you know, once I got people like Alice in Wonderland involved and Rez involved and just all these amazing artists that I've looked up to for so long, I was like, okay, like, let me start asking more people and asking, you know, just like, I was just going left and right. I was asking all these artists. And then it kind of became into a thing where people are like, I want to be, I've heard I hear that you're doing this. I really want to be a part of this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, yes, absolutely. Like, I would listen to their music and I'd be like, yes, like you're in, like, let's make this happen. So we ended up having like over 30 women on this lineup, which was so incredible. And on top of that, I had asked a bunch of like managers and, you know, people who work at record labels and people who work at SiriusXM, a bunch of women who do inspire me to do liners for this festival. I'm like, how cool would it be if like only women host it, right? If I only have these women who've always inspired me and have always worked with me record something and introduce these artists. I'm like, that would be so awesome. So I just ended up reaching out to a bunch of people, gave them a script, and I was like, tell me your story, tell me some advice, tell me something that inspires you. And it ended up coming together just really, really like beautifully. And it really became something more than I had imagined it to be, because after that, I started getting emails from women and DMs from women saying like, thank you so much for doing this, or them saying like, I want to be a part of your next one. And like, they were literally saying, I wouldn't even have the courage to come to a program director or a company like this and ask to be a part of something. But like, listening to this and hearing like how vulnerable a lot of these women were, they're like, I feel just like, I feel like a sort of confidence, and I'm just going to kind of go for it. And I'm like, this is what I wanted. This is exactly what I wanted. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Don't be afraid to kind of put yourself out there in so many senses. So as far as your question of, is there going to be another one? 1000%. I want there to be another one. Probably, I would say probably next year, or like maybe like late this year. But my dream, especially after seeing this all happen, is for it to happen in person. Whether it's like at a stage at a festival, or you know, or it is like a full I don't, or like just like a private show. I would just love to see this happen. And I think a lot of people just didn't really understand, like, wait a second, like just for women, like, what about all the men? I'm like, look at every other festival lineup. Like, it's like 95% men, right? And 5% women. So I'm like, we're not asking to be like higher than men. I'm like, we're asking to be equivalent to men. So like, let us have this, right? Like, let us have this moment. And I think this just has opened up a lot of people's eyes. I just saw Dirty Bird is actually putting on a woman only festival, and it's a virtual festival. And it literally just like made me so happy, because I'm like, this is incredible. I'm like, seeing this happen in the dance music industry is huge. And like, I think you can agree, it's huge seeing how much like women are being supported now. And I love it. So one step at a time, but I'm glad that I was a small part in making the end goal.
The interesting thing is that you didn't actually bill it as a female only or women only festival at all. You were just like, this is who we have. And then as people look at the lineup, they're like, wow, what an amazing lineup of talent. And then the penny drops that,
Yep.
wait, it's all women. And I was joking with you that, yeah, you should do a festival where it's 5% men. Like, just
Right.
flip the script.
You know what's funny is you say that. I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Ooh, sorry. I was like, I did that on purpose, like, because I was like, I don't want this to be a whole thing where people are like, oh my God, women only, women only. No, I want you to like sit there, listen to the music, hear the promos, vibe to the music, and then later figure out, oh my gosh, this was all women. Look, it made no difference whatsoever. You still dance to the music the exact way you would dance to a festival that is 95% men. It would be the exact same thing. So I think that was just like so cool to be able to, it wasn't just like all over your face. It was kind of like you realize later. And I think a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even, it didn't even cross my mind. And like when you have that realization later on, you realize like, you can do this in so many scenarios. Like I know Aluna, I had a talk with her manager, and he was telling me that she'll play specific sets where like she won't even say anything. She'll just play all women artists. She'll play all female artists the entire time. She sees everyone is dancing the exact same way. She sees everyone's like enjoying themselves the exact same way. Gets off the stage, doesn't even say anything, and then she just knows in the back of her mind, I just supported all women in the set. No one would even blink an eye at it, you know? So it's cool to be able to be a part of something like that.
That's amazing. So you mentioned Steve Aoki's Remix Radio earlier, which you just recently launched, which is a really big deal because this is a channel that basically every other channel that you worked on already existed. This came to be because, in part because of you, in large part because of you, and you have a lot to do with Steve Aoki's Remix Radio. Why don't you tell us how that whole thing came about and what the deal with the station is, with the channel, not station?
Yeah, I mean, either way, same thing. Yeah, so this was really, really cool for me. So I would say this was November of 2019. He was coming into SiriusXM for an interview. So I was going to interview him. And the day before I found out he's coming in to promote his new book. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. They gave me the book like end of day. So like the next morning I was going to interview him. So I was like, I can't. And then they were like, you're going to be on camera too. I was like, all right, I cannot mess this up. I'm like, it's freaking Steve Aoki. I'm like, if like I'm interviewing about a book, like I have to read this book. You can't, there's no spark notes. It's not like the book just came out. Right? So I'm like, I'm just gonna, all night I was up like just skimming through the book. I was reading it, I was putting post-it notes, I was doing all these things. And I was like, all right, I'm not gonna mess this up. The next day, interviewed him. It was probably one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done because it's not just like, all right, like what flavor cake are you caking, whatever, or like what's this next single that's coming out that's like your 50th single this month. Like it was very in depth and about his life. And like I think when I'm at festivals, it's like obviously you're not going to get super deep. You're so hype, you're so excited, you just want to talk about all the good things. So in this sense, we did talk about some emotional things, and I think that built a connection between the two of us where he was like, okay, like I know her now. He like got to know me. Although I've met him like 3 or 4 times beforehand. This moment is when he was like, okay, like, you know, we're vibing. So we kind of built a friendship off of that. A few days later, they had invited me to an event that was happening in New York. And I was like, yeah, let me just go. I ended up going with a past intern of mine. I was like, do you want to come with me? This seems like a cool event. So we're sitting there, Steve Aoki's playing. And I run into his manager who I'd met like 3 days prior because I had interviewed. So I was like, hey, how are you? You know, we were just kind of talking, and he was like, yeah, like great interview the other day. He's like, yeah, I've really been wanting Steve to have a station or a channel on SiriusXM. He's like, I don't know exactly like what it's going to be, but like we've been wanting this for so long. We think it would be so cool if we curate something like that. And then I was like, yeah, that could be really cool. I was like, why don't you guys do something like remixes? I was like, because BPM is technically today's dance hits and remixes, but as a programmer for BPM. And like, we play a lot more dance hits than remixes. And there are a lot of remixes that I do want to play that we don't really get the chance to, because we focus a lot more on the bigger dance songs. And we never want to take away from like the big remixes that are out there. So he's like, oh, that could be a really cool idea. And the way I kind of put those two together is because Steve Aoki has a weekly show on BPM called Steve Aoki's Remix Rewind, and he counts down his like 5 or 6 favorite remixes of the week. So that's why I like had put those two together. And he was like, you know, I really like that idea. So then he was like, I'm gonna text the president of your company right now. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, do not do that. I was like, please don't do that. I was like, I wasn't even trying to like, I can't promise anything. Like, it's not on me. It's not up to me. I was like, I was just spitting out ideas. He's like, no, do not worry. Like, he's like, let me just like see if he's interested. Literally was like, hey, like, we want to make a channel happen. Like 20 minutes later, the president of our company texts him just like a thumbs up. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay. I was like, obviously I want to help with this, but I was like, it's not up to me. Like, you have to talk to my bosses first. Like, so we were just in conversation of that a bunch of times, ended up like looping in Geronimo. Then, you know, one thing led to another. And once like the idea started forming, we had to get all these approvals, go through engineering, marketing, digital, you know, get logos made, do all of that, we talked to SiriusXM, talked to Aoki's team, like at least like 1,000 times before, you know, anything really even happened. So yeah, it was probably like a year's worth of work. And long story short, I now work together with Matt Colon, who's Steve Aoki's manager, Harley Bernstein and Taryn Smith, and of course Steve Aoki. And they have, I couldn't even name every single person on that team. They're all so amazing. We work with all of them, and I wish I had the list of all of them, but they're all so amazing. So it's just been really great. It's been about a month since we've launched it, and we're getting a lot of good feedback. And I know listeners are really happy, especially like avid BPM listeners. They are always begging for more just dance channels, because, you know, we have three or four. There's so many subgenres of dance that like they're always looking for more stuff. So this was just like an amazing thing to launch, and I'm having so much fun with it. And it's just different launching a channel from the start, and like literally knowing that like the idea just came from like a random night. So yeah, that's kind of how it came about, and it's just been an incredible experience.
I don't think that people that listen to you or see you understand just how excited and important this stuff still is to you, just because you've been doing it for 10 years, but it's almost like a quick 10 years in a weird way, where you're like, I still remember distinctly showing up at a radio station as a fan, seeing the and now you are that person, and it is a big deal. You know, I don't think you take it for granted at all. You know how hard you worked, but it's just it's not as casual to you as it might seem, or people might think. Because I never feel like it is. I feel like, I mean, look how excited you are about this Steve Aoki thing. It is a big deal. It's a totally big deal to be able to launch a channel. And you just said it took a year. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. I think that's when I always run into this problem, and it gets really aggravating sometimes, because obviously like when I post on Instagram, or if I post on Facebook, Twitter, I'm posting the fun parts of it. Obviously, that's anyone's life. So like when you see, I'm at a festival, or I just launched this channel with Steve Aoki, like, it looks amazing. So anytime I meet someone, or anytime I see someone, it's like, your job is so fun. Like, you're just partying all the time. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, if only I can explain to you. I'm like, what you see is like 10% of like what goes into it. It's a 10% of the amazing perks that we get. But I'm like, there is so much work that goes into this stuff. And like, it's just like, it gets aggravating sometimes, because you're like, how am I supposed to prove to this stranger that I'm doing all of this work? So sometimes you just have to be like your own cheerleader in a sense, and be like, you know what, like I did this. Even sometimes my closest friends or family don't understand unless they're in the industry. I'm like, no, you have no idea. I just edited this for 7 hours and I just lost it. And it's like, oh, whatever, it'll be fine. I'm like, no, it won't be fine. You don't get it. So
I know. People only ever see, the finished article that I write. And I'm like, oh, that took me like 40 hours from
So long.
inception to print. And
Exactly.
I'm like, that's a lot of work. You have no idea. And then it just, disappears after a day from
Yeah,
people.
right, exactly.
So yeah, Rita, thank you so much for your insight. I hope to see you in person soon. You can read
I know. I can't. I feel like we know each other so well by now, but like we haven't even met in person.
but I have the article I wrote on Rita for Festival Advisor is huge. So a huge meaning long.
Yeah.
Uh, all about her journey in the written version. This was just like the tip of the iceberg. So make sure you check that out. I really am super support. I'm like a personal fan of Rita's. So definitely check out the whole story because she worked really hard to get to where she is, and I just want people to know that.
Well, you're amazing. Thank you so much. It means a lot coming from you. You do such amazing work. So thank you so much for having me.
See you soon.
Hey Insiders, thanks for watching this video. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to our channel or feel free to check out our recommended videos. Thanks for watching.